Like the Christopher.
Please, just anything that I can do, my thoughts, my prayers, my hopes, my dreams, are with y'all. I'm not sure what the steps are to move on beyond this, but I do, I know, the anyways. So that's just for the really sad news that happened today. So, anyways, moving on. Um, On to bigger and better and brighter things and happier things. Um, we are being broadcast live on Truth Frequency Radio, of course, iHeartRadio, TuneIn, TalkStream Live. And if you're listening in on YouTube, make sure you do mash that like and subscribe button. And if you got the bell rung, you'll always be alerted as to when I'm going live. And if you catch us on the flip side on the podcast, make sure you do check us out on iTunes, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. No matter how you are hearing me, just make sure you do say hello. I love it when you all say hello. And I want to thank you again for joining me here on my spiritual journey. And I hope you want to keep learning with me. And if you want to support the show, we do have the Etsy store. And I added more products. There's ball caps now and some a tote bag, I think it is. So check it out. It's www.etsy.com/shop/Monarch MTN Studio. The call line is open tonight, so if you want to share your thoughts or opinions, please give me a call. That number is 213-233-3998, or if you're across the pond in the UK, it's 443-203-393-2871. And yay, I sound better tonight, so which is awesome. But even better, I have a guest tonight. We have the lovely Belaluna is here to talk a wee bit about the Celtic tradition. And so she's going to be talking about the deities a bit and just some of the things she's learned on her path. And so if you do have questions, by all means, give us a call. And so, Bella, thank you for joining me here. Can you hear me? Are you there?
I can hear you.
Yay! I did it right. I'm not the old pro quite yet, but I'm getting there. So, I guess just start off. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, let's see where to begin. What would you like to know? Where would
Um,
you like me to start?
well, I suppose, how long have you been a pagan? Start there.
So, I would say that would be on and off for. I would probably go between being a pagan and being an agnostic. I would say on and off between the last 20-25 years.
Okay.
Um, the last few years is when I've really just finally come to terms with myself, so to speak, and and decided I am who I am. There is no shame,
Mhm.
and it unfortunately took me a really long time to get there, but I'm there, and I'm glad I am.
Mhm.
But a very long time.
Yeah, I found the same thing myself. In looking back, I've been a pagan for decades, and it's only been in the last 10 years I really clicked that I really am a pagan, and then it's only been in
Mhm.
like the last 3-ish, 5-ish, 3-ish, 5-ish that I've really acknowledged my path. And
Right.
on the one hand, I'm just kind of surprised that it took me so long to realize it, and I'm kind of sad that I missed out on so much. So, but
I agree. I mean, the vast majority of my life has been in the broom closet.
mhm,
Um, and unfortunately, a good portion of it still is. I
mhm,
mean, obviously, my boyfriend knows he's on the same path or a similar path. And there are one or two people in my family. My daughter definitely knows, and my brother knows. The rest of my family doesn't. And there were a few people at work that I did open up to, but for the most part, most of the people in my life do not know still.
mhm,
Um, I'm not ashamed. It's just not something that I'm going to advertise, you
mhm,
know. But my growing up, it was very. It's kind of your typical story, you know. Very, very. I'm half Filipino,
mhm,
and grew up very, very strong Catholic presence in my family.
mhm,
Um, some of it you might even say fanatical.
Mhm.
And so to that side of the family, they will never know, because they will never understand. And I've come to terms with that. I'm okay with that. Um, it sucks, but it's okay. Um, but yeah, I think that is what kept me. I shouldn't say I think. I know that's what kept me for the longest time,
Mhm.
for actually fully embracing who I was, and really just letting go,
Mhm.
and fully embracing it, because I was so afraid of what my family would say, and so afraid of the lectures, because growing up, that's all
Mhm.
I got were lectures, especially from my aunt and my cousins.
Mhm.
They would see me with all of these symbols, things that I was wearing, books that I was reading, and I'd get these like mini interventions every time I'd go to visit them. So yeah, so I know it wouldn't be any different if they found out today.
Mhm.
So, but
Yeah, I understand that one. I'm the same way. My immediate family knows my husband, my boys, my daughter, um, his siblings, my one of my sisters, but not the other one because she is very, very, very Christian, and I just don't want to. I don't see the need to argue about our different faiths at all.
yeah, I agree. I agree. There's no point. I've gotten to that age, um, that I'm also just coming to terms with, um, of I'm hitting my Crohn's cycle, and I feared it for the longest time,
Mhm.
but I'm sort of embracing it.
Mhm.
I'm learning to embrace it, and I'm actually
Mhm.
becoming quite proud of it, to be honest. That's a new thing for me, because I went from fearing it and denying to actually coming to where I'm having some pride in that, because I like who I am today. I like what I've become. I wouldn't change a single thing that I have been through, because that's made me who I am today. Um, and we'll talk about a little bit later. I credit a lot of that to the Morrigan, to be honest with you. She is a Celtic triple goddess. She is my matron goddess. And I firmly believe that she was present in my life since a very, very young age, um, guiding me. And and so I do feel that she has helped a lot to mold me into who I am today. I do believe that a lot of it also was me, myself, and my strength. I think that's part of what drew her to me. Um, but but yeah.
How did you know that the Morrigan was going to be your patroness or your primary deity that you were going to work with?
So your traditional ones like Wonder Woman. And then as I got a little bit older, Xena, Warrior Princess, and why is that important to me? Because um, I had some difficulties in my life. I'm sure no more nor less than anybody else, but I had a lot of struggles. I had a lot of struggles in my life, and especially as a child, I was very sheltered. I had a mother that, gosh, I've reconciled with her since, and she's since passed, and her ashes are in my house, so I'm going to be careful with what I say. But um, she was a bully. She was probably what I would call the ultimate bully, and to her own child, to me. So I felt growing up very isolated, very beaten down, and so to see strong women was such an important thing to me and such a huge influence to me. And when I would feel like I was completely beaten down, I used to, can you imagine, as a little girl, I used to sit there and cry and say, okay. I'm ready to leave now. I don't think this is working out. And I'm like 8, 9 years old. Ready to leave this earth. This isn't working. I don't think I can do this. Um, and then whenever I would start having those feelings, I'd come across stories of Wonder Woman, of Joan of Arc and such, and they would instill such strength in me and such inspiration that I it helped me through. I honestly, strangely enough, learned how to be a strong person a lot through watching these women, um, and learning from them. And I remember into my adulthood when I learned about the Morrigan for the first time, and did some research on her and found out about her. I immediately was drawn to her, immediately clicked. And so I started delving into her more and more. And it hit me like a ton of bricks that this was her the whole time. And I'm telling you, I cried. Um, and from a spiritual perspective, I had never really cried over anything spiritual, any kind of spiritual awakenings or anything like that. But I cried like a little baby. Um, and I just knew at that point that it was her that whole time. Um, and I thanked her. She's been with me ever since. And the things that people say about her, um, in terms of being scary, she's a dark goddess. Um, I'm not going to deny that, but at the same time, I'm also going to deny that because, yeah, she can be harsh. As much as she helped with raising me up, so to speak, to be a strong woman, she also, I think, put these trials and tribulations in my path to make me work through those and conquer those trials and tribulations. And so, for those who say that I'm going to seek out the Morrigan, that's beautiful. Just be careful what you wish for, because she is not she can be a sweet loving motherly figure, but never in the I'm going to spoon feed you and I'm going to nurture you. It's a tough love, so to speak. um, but when you break through her trials, the joy that you feel, the joy that you know that she is looking down at you as, um, with pride, I think is amazing.
Oh, absolutely. It's a hugely powerful thing. Um, I I've always followed Hecate, from and I've been aware of Hecate, for a long time. I connected her to the moon, and I talked to the moon for many, many, many years. And
Yeah,
then, then it clicked probably about 10 years ago. It's like, oh, duh, that's Hecate. And then
yeah.
about 2 years ago, I was called by Kaninos, and it didn't click because apparently I'm slow, and and
You and me both.
I need to be hit with a brick occasionally. Anybody who knows me knows that occasionally I am just in my own mind, and it doesn't matter what is going on. I need to be just thumped upside the head to get the point. And it's only been in the last 3 or 4 months that it dawned on me. Oh, that was Caninos. Um,
Yeah.
and it took probably my little oak tree, Groot, to really drive that point home. But even then, it didn't click until he was probably about 6 inches tall. It's like, so yeah,
Mm.
um,
So you also have a little Celtic influence in your path as well.
absolutely. I'm very very eclectic still, because I do pay attention to like Odin, for instance. But
Hmm.
Epona has been a guide for a very long time. Also, in not just my dreams, but even in real life. I have two very large paintings of a black horse. One, if I'm in my regular seat when I'm trying to do my show, you can see part of it. And then I've got one in my room, and it's just a racing black horse. It's awesome. And then I was at the dollar store getting craft stuff for my daughter, and lo and behold, there in the middle of a shelf all by itself is yet another little black horse. So that's going to end up in some safe place at some point. It's right now on my kitchen counter. But
Right.
yeah, I think Epona has very much been a guide for my path, because that's what she does. She points out the path. And I wish that, maybe she wasn't so subtle. Because,
Yeah.
yeah, just, so often
Well,
we, we need
that's
them. But
that's definitely where we have something in common. Cernunnos is who I consider my patron god.
hmm
Um, and I feel very guilty, honestly, because the Morrigan has been such a strong presence in my life. I think I admittedly pay more attention to her, and I have been trying to change that. And I feel like he's really, um, really kind of shouted out to me as of late, um, to pay more attention to him. It's been some really cool things. My daughter and her fiance, I did not know this, but when I moved back into my house, they had been living in my house beforehand, before I moved back. And I did not know they had started this boneyard in the back. And it was several years or a few years ago. And so it had completely grown over it, and they had forgotten that it was there. And when I moved back, I started going out in my yard, and I would notice um, there was a deer skull, and then a horn, and then a couple of other things, and they had totally forgotten that it was there. And it was like every day would come out and something new. It's like I wasn't digging for it. It was just like poof. It was just coming out of the ground, and I was just like, oh, I think I'm ignoring you, aren't I? And then after that, it was just like bone after bone after bone after bone. I was like, okay, I get it. So I am now trying to work on an altar, a space in my sacred space for him, so I can honor him a little bit more. I just did a little ritual actually before our call, um, focusing on him. So I feel bad. I feel bad because I do feel he is extremely important, and he is um, definitely, I honestly feel like he is a really good balance in my life. I mean, there's a reason why we honor both gods and goddesses, because um, we we believe in the balance, male, female, light, dark, and so I feel he definitely provides that balance that I need in my life. I love the Morrigan dearly, but there are times where I am realizing more and more where I really need to work more with Pernunos and balance me out.
yeah, I think that's one of the things that for me really drew me to the pagan path in general is just honoring both the male and feminine aspect of the deity, because you just don't
Mhm.
see that in Christianity. Now, there's a little bit if you're Catholic because of all the saints and such. Um, but if they were to stop and just do a little bit of religious history search, they'd realize they're not monotheistic. That all those little saints are actually deities. So, um,
Yeah,
but it 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 was really frustrating to me because it felt like the feminine aspect of the deity just wasn't acknowledged and was demonized. Uh,
exactly. Well,
so
exactly. And not just that, not just but um, but then taking women who are in some of the pagan pathways, pagan religions, and pulling them into Christianity, and then, as you mentioned,
Excuse
demonizing
me.
them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's to me, that's horrible. It's like
Mm-hmm.
what they've done with Lilith, especially,
Oh, yeah.
is that to me is the ultimate.
Sin.
Of, I'm sorry.
It's a sin. um, but to each their own, I guess. But I wish that so many folks of, especially with contemporary Christianity, would stop and be a little more open minded about paganism in general. Then we wouldn't be in the broom
Yeah,
closet.
I think that's going to be still a very long time to come.
Um,
Christianity did a bang up job on taking a lot of the deities um, from the from paganism, from the various cultures around the world, and
mm-hmm.
demonize them. And it's so well ingrained
Mm-hmm.
that it's going to be a very, very long time coming, very long time coming, which is a shame.
It
But yeah,
is. There's so much love on the pagan path that people are missing out on because of that demonization. It's quite frustrating.
it is. And I think, like you know, what we talked about earlier, I think that's what kept both of us from really fully embracing our path, what took so long, because of the just it being beaten into our heads our whole lives that these are wrong, these people are wrong. Um, Even though deep down inside you know that that's not true, but it's kind of it's funny they talk about being worried about getting into cults and being brainwashed. Was this was the ultimate brainwash. The majority of us have been brainwashed, and some will stay brainwashed for the rest of their lives. And I don't judge those who are Christian, Catholic, any one of the Protestant religions. Um, that is just as much their choice as it is what we do. Um, I would be I would be a hypocrite if I judge them.
Yes, absolutely. All right. Well, hey, guess what? We are at the bottom of the hour already. So we're going to go to break. And then when we come back, I want to talk a little bit more about being in the broom closet. And so we will be right back, everybody. or if you want to, or if you're across the pond and you want to make a call, that number is 44203 393 2871. And if sorry, I've got too many buttons. Also, if you want to support the store, it's or the show, it's you can buy stuff at www.etsy.com/shop/Monarch MTN Studio. And I did add some new stuff. And if you see anything that you really want added as far as products or a wish list, please let me know via email. Or if you have a story or anything you want to share via email, it's wildpaisley@gmail.com. And that's WILDEPAISLEY@gmail.com. So, uh, Bella, when we were talking earlier, we had talked a little bit about how even though you're kind of out there and you're allowing, you're being more and more available as a pagan, and you're the people around you know, but you are mostly in the closet. I guess what's what's going on, or how talk about your path. I guess let's start there.
Well, um, so kind of putting the broom closet thing to the side for a second. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, when you talk about my path, I'm of the belief, and again, this is my personal belief, um, that heritage ancestry plays a lot into it. And I feel like I'm almost the poster child for that. And the reason why I say that is because my whole life, even as a child, I had always been drawn to certain things. I'd always been drawn to all things Celtic, all things Norse, and of course Filipino. And when I say of course, because I grew up knowing that I was half Filipino, but I did not know anything about my other half because I'm adopted. Um, and I won't go into the whole story because I'd have to draw you freaking all kinds of charts and stuff to figure this one out. But um, so I always knew of my Filipino side, but I didn't know what exactly comprised my Caucasian side. But I can tell you what I was naturally drawn to, and like I said, the all things Celtic. Oh my gosh! Even as like a tween, I wanted so bad to learn how to speak Gaelic. I mean, I all things Celtic was just all about me. Um, and when fast forward to my future, and I ended up doing a DNA testing, and I found out that my Caucasian side was predominantly stemmed from the Western Europe, Northwestern Europe, and the vast majority of my white side is the lands that would have practiced Celtic paganism and Celtic witchcraft, and a little bit of and a smaller portion of that, probably I would say maybe um, if we're talking just the half part of me, probably like a 4 out of 5 part of me, the Celtic side, and the 1/5 part, the Nordic side, or maybe a little bit more than that. Um, but and again, it didn't quite bring tears like the whole Morgan awakening did to me, but it was definitely sent shivers up my spine because I felt that even though I didn't know what my heritage was, that it was so strong running in my blood that I knew. I didn't know, but I knew. If you know if you know what I mean by that.
Yes.
And so it's interesting because even though I knew about the Filipino side, Although I very much respect and learn about the Filipino paganism, which, by the way, there is a significant amount that you would not realize that there was, or there is. And even though I embrace some of that, for some reason, the Celtic path is what I've always been strongly pulled to, even before I realized what it was or what I was doing. It's just I've always naturally been drawn to it.
Okay. So I guess my next question then is what is the Celtic Path?
It's interesting because, believe it or not, it's actually, and at least this is from my perspective. Other people may have differing opinions, but to me, it's probably the most known and most common because if when you start reading about it and looking at it, it's a lot of what your um, traditional witchcraft and traditional paganism and even some of Wicca draw from. Um, the Wheel of the Year, all of those festivals and celebrations on the Wheel of a Year, that is of Celtic origin. So whether you follow the Celtic traditions or not, or follow the Celtic pantheon, when you're celebrating Lunasaw, that is honoring the god Lu, a Celtic god. It is these a lot of this is based on Celtic traditions, and so a lot of what we do. Celtic traditions are very herbal based, herbal magic, earth magic, honoring the earth. It's a lot of what people already automatically know in this culture, and may not even realize that a lot of it stems from the Celtic traditions.
Okay. So just real quick, had a question. Is planetary magic involved in all paths, do you think?
Um, I think that it can be. Um, I have not necessarily seen it so immensely in the Celtic past per se,
Mm-hmm.
or Nordic, to be
Yeah.
honest. Um, that's not to say that astrological workings are not present in those paths, but not like you tend to see in some of the other paths. Um, I think that's an individual thing at that point. If you are so if you're on the Celtic path or the Northern path, if you're a heathen, I think that if that's what calls to you, but I don't see it as the normal part of the path.
Okay. I think that's pretty straight up accurate. And part of the reasons why I'm eclectic, I suppose, is because I can pull some of those other things from other traditions or other paths that feel appropriate.
Exactly.
Like I work with runes a lot personally,
Hmm.
and which are generally pretty Nordic, rather than staves or something else. And so yeah, I do a little bit of astrology stuff, but it's such a deep, involved. Oh my gosh, topic. There's a lot to
Yeah.
astrology. It's not. I don't know. Runes are simpler. I don't have enough
It
brain
really
space.
is,
Um,
and I do my best
mm,
to try to incorporate it, but I will be the first one to admit I am not that well versed in that, and
mm-hmm.
I just don't feel that pulled to it. I know the basics, and I will incorporate the basics, but the houses and all of that, I just don't. That's not me.
Yeah, astrologers are I think gifted in their own way. They have to be to
Absolutely.
understand all that. Um,
Absolutely. It's interesting from, when you talk about, when I look at, when I talk about my path, it's actually, I can almost say you can kind of split it into two, because there's my pagan path and then there's my craft. And um, when I talk about my path, it is rather eclectic, but again, I do feel like it's based on my ancestry. But so it's like I kind of
Okay.
eclectic because I specifically use those three. Celtic, predominantly Celtic, with a little bit of Norse and a touch of Filipino. But when it comes to my craft itself, the witchcraft practice, I'm about as eclectic as it can get. I'm one step away from a coyote. Um, but I'm not a coyote because when I grab something, when I see something that I like, I will hold on to it. Um,
All right.
so,
So that's a term that I'm not 100% familiar with. What's a coyote?
oh, chaos magic.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I just wanted to double check. Um, yes, I understand how chaos magic would be, and the path or your ritual work, sometimes your craft work is very different than your path.
Hmm.
Because,
Yeah.
like, I'm an eclectic pagan and I am a kitchen witch. They're sometimes they come together and sometimes they just don't. Um, so the question that I asked you was from Juju Cakes on TFR, and yeah, we love questions. I love questions. It gives us talking points, if nothing else. so, um, so do you think, or do you know much about Druidism, for instance, and how it relates to the Celtic Path? Are they pretty synonymous, or are they separate?
It is not synonymous. There are druids are slightly different, or I shouldn't say slightly different. They are different. A Celtic witch and a Celtic traditionalist is not equitable to a druid. That's a druidry is a whole different group, very structured. I do know that there are three different categories, so to speak. You've got the bard, and you've got there's two others. There's a lot of overlap in terms of beliefs and practices, but being a druid or being a Celtic witch or Celtic pagan is not necessarily synonymous with being a druid. Um, and I would not dare to even say that I have vast knowledge of Druidry other than from a 50,000 foot level because I'm not a Druid. I know enough to respect that path to say that I am not a Druid. That is definitely something like and nobody hit me here, kind of like ceremonial magic. I'm not saying it's like ceremonial magic, but I mean in the sense of that, it's very formal study, very lots of concentration of study and learning about it, and a lot of specifics to it.
Yeah,
So
it's very involved, is my understanding, and
very involved. Yes,
and it's definitely a calling. Uh,
absolutely. Many people refer to it as like it's the pagan version of the monk, at least in the Celtic traditions. It's kind of the closest thing that you can call to like a priest or a monk in
yes,
the pagan world is a druid. It's a lifelong calling, so is obviously everything else, what we do as well. But there's some, I don't want to say controversy. I don't know if that's the right word, but I have read up on it enough to know that there is some infighting, so to speak, amongst people that follow the Druid path. Some say that what the modern Druid does today is not really true Druidry, and that there are no more real Druids alive. Um, you know,
I've heard the
I
same
mean,
thing, and
I'm sorry.
I said I've heard the very same thing, and it's mostly because traditional druids or ancient druids, a lot of their traditions and their teachings and stuff were oral, in
Mhm.
practice,
Yes.
and they felt that, if it was something that had meaning or mattered, to their faith, they didn't write it down. It was only the unimportant things, or that was commonplace, was actually
Hmm.
the things that were noted. So yeah, there's a lot
Yeah.
of, I know there's, it's, you're right, it's not controversy, but it's definitely dialogue,
Yeah.
regarding, ancient Druidry versus contemporary.
And it's actually, the same can be said about the Celtic Path as well. I mean, minus those who have passed down in their family traditions, there was not a lot written down on the in the Celtic tradition as well. In fact, a lot of the writing that you do find out there are writings from uh, Catholics. When they came in and tried to convert, they were the ones who actually documented a lot of this.
Hmm. Yes.
The infamous St. Patrick. Um, St. Patrick actually documented quite a bit of the Irish Celtic traditions. And if it weren't necessarily for what he documented, we may not have had some of that information. So when people say that, oh, this is not like how it really was before, it's not real, it's all modern. Well, yeah, I mean, of course it is. This is where we're at. We're in the modern day, and there's only so much. That is the nature of history and the nature of passage of time. There's only so much that's going to be retained, and
Absolutely.
so we do what we can with the information that we have. And to me, it's not always necessarily about what's written in the books. It's about what calls to us and what our intuition says. Kind of going back to what I was saying about my draw before I realized who I was genetically. That's, to me, that's what we need to listen to, is what is our inner selves telling us,
Yes.
because that's our guides, that's our ancestors guiding us.
I did the DNA thing too, and, I found out that yes, I am Germanic, in origin, but, I'm actually mostly Irish.
Nice.
So it's like, all of those things that my family had told me, through the years, were not as accurate as they thought they were. So yeah, there's a lot of Germanic, but, no, there's a lot of Irish. So,
Yeah.
um,
I mean, it's more, for me, obviously, it was a personal thing. Having been adopted, was something that I really wanted to do. I would say, for others, unless you have something like that, it's a nice to know, but it's not not something that you have to know. Because again, I feel like um, it all comes from other places. It's what are you being called to? What are you being drawn to? What's important from the inside?
yes, I agree. So we're, almost to 5 minutes. Can you believe it's been an hour already? So just real quick, I guess, talk about being, in the broom closet just a little bit.
Uh, so that um, that is not so difficult for me per se because I'm older. I'm not living with parents or anything like that. So it is predominantly at family gatherings, or I can't share a lot of things with my family that I wish that I could. Um, and that I think is the saddest part, because you know I've um, I've sort of been considered the black sheep of the family kind of my whole life, regardless. And so this doesn't help any, that there's even uh, more stuff that I have to keep from my family. So that really sucks. I'll be honest with that.
I
Um,
understand that one. I'm the black sheep of the
but
black sheep, so I get it.
yeah, but when you are able to find somebody in your family, especially somebody that means a lot to you, that you can open up to, I think that really relieves a lot of that. And um, obviously, my daughter is immensely important to me. And when I told her, and I actually only told her last year, um, it was actually a little anticlimactic because apparently I'm a little bit more transparent than I realize I am. Either that or like she said, Mom, I grew up with you. I know you. You're my mother. And we are really close. When I told her, she's kind of like, yeah, I figured. I was like, oh, well, okay. That's good.
Yeah. Now, is she
Um,
empathic, or did she just kind of clue in that, yeah, I know, mom?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Is she empathic, or did she just like, yeah, I know, mom? Is she an empath, or she just knew?
You know, I haven't quite figured out yet if she's an empath. I'm right now because I see signs and then at the same time I don't. Um, right now I'm chalking it up to she just knows me really well.
Totally understand. My son wasn't very surprised, and then he told his BFF, which now this is really funny to me because I've known this kid now for 5 years, and 5 years ago I wasn't very pagan. I was pretty focused on being a surprise mom at 40, and
Yeah.
and um, and his BFF goes, "Well, yeah, I know. I've known that for years. I knew that when I met you." Um, he just intuitively knew that this was my path, and
Yeah.
it was just me waking up and realizing it. Hello. So I wish his.
I think divulging it to my coworkers at the time, and again, not all of them, just a choice few. That was also a little telling because I guess I think I felt okay to tell them probably because of the same kind of vibes I was getting from them. Not that they're on the same path, but that they have that sense of openness, that they all have they do have that sense of intuitiveness about them. Because the interesting thing was that uh, the two of them that I told were just like, yeah, kind of obvious. Oh, okay. I didn't think it was obvious, but to them it was obvious. But interestingly enough, there was one person that I told, and the way he reacted, I was taken aback, and it shut me down again. And I have not, and so it's making me rethink telling opening up. I was getting to the point where I was like, okay, this is good. The world is changing, everybody's accepting. I think this is okay. But yeah, the way that person reacted, um, it really made me rethink. And he just kind of looked at me, like, so what does that mean?
Yeah,
And I tried to explain it to him, and he wasn't like, I don't like you now, but he was clearly taken aback.
I.
And
Excuse me. I
and
get it.
then when I moved back into my house, I was looking for a dog sitter, and there was somebody in the neighborhood that was posting, we've got this app for our
Hey,
neighborhood,
Bella,
and they were I'm
honey,
sorry.
I want to hear the story, and we're gonna have to do this later because we are out
Oh,
of time, honey bunch. Um,
oh, okay.
we had a good hour. It was a quick hour. So,
Yeah.
folks, we're just about done. You want to email me? It's wildpaisley@gmail.com. It's wild with an E. we're going to be back here Friday at 9 p.m., technology permitting. And I guess thanks for joining us. So, merry meet and merry part, and merry meet again. And Bella, I'll call you back in just a little bit, okay?
All right.
All right. Thanks,
Thank you,
guys.
ma'am.
Have a good night, my lovelies. Oh, and Natalie is on next, so stay tuned.